Welcome to Befrienders Penang training. We shall start with the Befrienders Charter, followed by an explanation of what befriending is, and then talk about the essential qualities required to be a befriender. All of you have signed up to be volunteers of Befrienders Penang. Just as when you join any organization as an employee, it is essential to know the goals of the organization so that everyone is working towards the same goals. Likewise, in Befrienders, the Charter sets out clear guidelines of the services provided by our volunteers so that we can continue to provide professional and consistent service to anyone who contacts us, either through the phone, WhatsApp, email, or face-to-face. Throughout the training, when we use the word caller, it will mean whoever who contacts Befrienders Penang, whether through phone, WhatsApp, email, or face-to-face. Befrienders Charter is included in the workbook. It states the aims, objectives, and policies of our Befriender Centers. It has 8 points. Please familiarize yourself with these 8 important points. We Suicide Prevention Helpline. So the very first point in the Charter is we provide emotional support to people when they are feeling suicidal. Keywords here are emotional support. Not everyone who calls us is suicidal, but it does not mean they are not suffering emotional pain too, which brings us to the second point in the Charter, that volunteers strive to alleviate loneliness, misery, despair, and depression by listening to those who feel they cannot turn to anyone else who would understand and accept them. We try to ease their pain by listening to them, not by counseling or giving advice, but by listening. Point number 3. Anyone who contacts us has the right to remain anonymous. If they choose not to give their name at all, or they want to use any other name besides their own, it is perfectly fine. We do not have caller ID on our phones. In the same vein, a befriender never uses his or her real name when answering calls. We all have SAM names, example, Sun, Rainbow, Zen, etc. What is the reason we do that? I hear you ask. For security and confidentiality, we do not divulge any personal details about ourselves, nor do we divulge any personal details of other befrienders to people who contact us. Number 4, whatever is said by the caller, about the caller, to the befriender remains confidential within the center. It is not just confidential between you and the caller, because sometimes we need to discuss the call or do case studies. So always qualify yourself by including the words, "It is confidential within the center." Point number 5. Befrienders is not aligned to any political party and do not follow the teachings of any religion. And if a befriender feels very strongly about certain issues, for example, whether about suicide, sexuality, incest, drugs, or alcohol, the befriender cannot tell the caller, "What you are doing is wrong." We always remain non-judgmental and we do not impose our convictions on anyone. Like now, volunteers like yourselves have been selected, being trained, and will be guided and supported by other experienced volunteers. On certain occasions, centers can request the advice of professional consultants. Example, asking psychologists or psychiatrists about certain challenging callers who have severe mental health disorders. In appropriate circumstances, callers may be invited to consider seeking professional help. For example, seeing a psychiatrist for their depression, or a lawyer for their legal issues, or WCC, or Women's Center for Change for domestic violence issues. Befriending is what befrienders do. So, what is befriending? Befriending is the offering of friendship by one ordinary human being to another at a time of crisis. Take a moment to think about this definition and compare it to ordinary friendship. Is it the same as making friends and socializing? No, because befriending is not a social relationship. Befriending is both more and less than ordinary friendship. It is more than friendship because of its availability. For example, Befrienders KL provides 24/7 service. Under normal circumstances, would you be available at any time, let's say even at 4 a.m., to discuss whatever that's troubling your friend? Likewise, if you had problems, would you call your friend at any hour just because you couldn't sleep? It is more than friendship because of guaranteed confidentiality. Point number 4 of the Charter states that whatever is said by the caller, about the caller, to the befriender remains confidential within the center. Is it guaranteed that your friend or relative whom you told your story to will be able to keep it private and confidential? Befriending is more than friendship because it accepts friendship in people who might not be chosen as friends. This means that in normal circumstances, if we were not befrienders, we might not have chosen the callers to be our friends. The callers might have needed to speak to someone about their issues and called befrienders. We, as volunteers, are at the center to fulfill our roles as befrienders. We are not there to make the callers our friends. Remember, we are a helpline, not a chat line. Befriending is less than friendship because it is not mutual. For example, people who have issues or problems can call us. But when we have a problem or in times of crisis, we cannot call up our callers and expect them to befriend us. We are also not allowed to meet our callers outside of the center for a chat or coffee. Befriending is not counseling because our volunteers are not trained as counselors or psychologists. We do not give advice and we do not solve the caller's problems. Remember, we are governed by the Charter and its 8 points, meaning if there's anyone who is about to jump off a building or bridge, it is not our responsibility as a befriender to try to prevent this possible suicide from happening by being there physically, because we are also not trained in crisis intervention. What can befriending provide for the caller? It provides a safe space to be heard when they tell their story. It provides a way to understand their own distress by raising self-awareness. Befrienders will listen in a non-judgmental way. Befrienders will validate feelings by paraphrasing and reflecting feelings back to the caller. Befrienders will explore options with the callers. Befrienders provide emotional support. Befrienders assure confidentiality within the center of whatever was shared and the caller's identity. How befriending helps? By providing emotional relief. By being there for the caller will know she or he is not alone. Befriending helps improve self-esteem, self-worth, and/or self-confidence. It helps develop coping skills to manage their own emotions. Befriending encourages callers to take responsibility of their emotions and situation they find themselves in. It encourages callers to find their own solutions to their problems or issues. Befriending enables the capacity for a growth mindset because it raises self-awareness. We shall be talking about self-awareness on the next video. We're going to do a short activity now. On a piece of paper, write down 3 people whom you would speak to when you have an issue or problem. Why that person? Think of all the qualities that person has and write it next to their name. How would you want to be helped? Just write down short descriptions will do. Please pause this video while you're doing this activity. The activity you just did shows that just like yourself, many people choose to be helped by others who may have some or most of these qualities. Take a moment to go through them. I am quite certain the qualities and skills you wrote down on your piece of paper are also on this slide. Each and every one of you watching this video has these essential qualities, just in varying degrees. Time and time again throughout the training, you'll hear these qualities or skills, which are highlighted in yellow, being emphasized because of Befriender's aims and approach in helping our callers. As a Befriender, these skills or qualities are also the essential qualities that will make you an effective Befriender. Here are the learning outcomes. Familiarize yourself with 8 points of the Charter so that you're very clear what the aims, objectives, and policies of our Befriender Centers are. This will also remind you what your role as a Befriender is every time you come to the center for duty. Remember, the callers are not our friends. Befrienders is a helpline, not a chat line, and volunteers are there to provide a consistent professional service. To be an effective Befriender, it takes practice and the willingness to continually sharpen your befriending skills of empathy, self-awareness, unconditional acceptance, active listening, and being non-judgmental. I shall now talk about our needs and wants and how it might be driving you to be a Befriender. To be an effective Befriender, you must be very clear what your role as a Befriender is. The befriending approach explains the method we help our callers and the rationale behind why it is done this way. And finally, I shall explain the philosophy or theory of the befriending approach. Once you are very clear about the befriending approach or the way we help our callers, you will be able to befriend more effectively. All of you want to be befrienders to help others. It is your compassion that is driving this need or want in you to help others. Compassion for others. Is it always a good thing? All of us are born with emotional compassion for others. We recognize suffering of others and feel compelled to help. But sometimes we do not have compassion for ourselves. What is self-compassion? It is the ability to treat ourselves with unconditional love and kindness. That is, be able to forgive ourselves instead of continuously punishing ourselves for making mistakes or knowing our own limit or breaking point instead of driving ourselves so hard to the point of being overstressed, anxious, and/or depressed. Sometimes we are overly focused on looking into the needs of others. We forget about our own needs and wants. When our own needs are not met, it will affect our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. You must be wondering, why are we talking about needs and wants? Only when we know what our own needs and wants are, will we then be able to recognize them in our callers. When our own needs and wants are not fulfilled, it will evoke or bring on certain feelings or emotions. Likewise, with our callers, when their needs and wants are not met, certain strong feelings or emotions are evoked, which in most cases will affect their mental, emotional, and general well-being. What are these universal human needs and wants? Please take a moment to read this 8-level adapted hierarchy of needs based on Maslow's theory. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a theory in psychology proposed by Abraham Maslow in 1943, where he believed only when our most basic needs at the bottom of the pyramid are met, are we then motivated to fulfill our other needs, wants, and desires further up the pyramid. For example, imagine refugees on a boat who don't know which country will take them, where their next meal will be, and whether they have enough water to survive on the boat. That is, their basic biological and physiological life needs at the bottom of the pyramid are not being met. They would then not be motivated to think about finding employment or earning money, which are safety needs on the next level of the pyramid. Another example. If you have a stable job with responsibilities and recognition, which means your esteem needs are met, then you might be motivated to improve yourself further to fulfill your cognitive needs. If, let's say, you're fortunate enough to own your own home, meaning your biological and physiological needs at the bottom of the pyramid are met, have stable income, your safety needs are met, happily married with children, belongingness and love needs are met, moving up your career ladder, esteem needs are met, mentally stimulated, cognitive needs are met, and able to enjoy nature and natural beauty, meaning your aesthetic needs are met. Then you'll be motivated to realize your true potential and achieve your ideal self through self-actualization. Ultimate need at the top of the pyramid is transcendence, means helping others to achieve their dreams and goals. Maslow argues, if needs are not met at various stages of the pyramid, it could lead to death. For example, if your basic life needs for food and water are not met, or post-trauma stress, when your safety needs are not met. For example, you're living in a violent household with daily mental, physical, and sexual abuse. Or you could develop mental health issues when your belongingness and love needs are not met, when you are in a relationship where your self-confidence and self-esteem are constantly being undermined by your parents, spouse, or partner. So, Where are you on this pyramid? Are your needs, wants, and desires being met at each level? This is a pertinent question which you must answer honestly if you truly want to know why you're not contented, happy, or motivated. Likewise, be very clear why you want to be a befriender. Is it for self-actualization, for personal growth and self-fulfillment? Or is it for transcendence, that is, helping others to achieve self-actualization? Or is it to fulfill your other needs on this pyramid? Only when you can fulfill those needs will you then be able to derive enjoyment from befriending and feel fulfilled being an effective befriender. As mentioned by Maslow, when your needs are not fulfilled or met, it can affect your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. This list is in your workbook. It lists common human needs and words describing your feelings when human needs are fulfilled or not fulfilled. Example, it is a basic human need to want to be loved, which is a need for care, understood, a need for connection, and accepted, a need for acceptance by our parents, our partners, and our friends. When our needs for affection, belongingness, and acceptance for who we are met, we might then feel happy, inspired, and hopeful. There are different ways of describing happy. Example, joyful, inspired or moved, and hopeful or optimistic. This is a very useful list of feelings and needs words which you can refer to for future use when befriending. From the Charter, you've learned that one of the roles of a befriender is to provide emotional support to those who are feeling suicidal. Volunteers also strive to alleviate misery, loneliness, despair, and depression by listening to those who feel they have no one else who would understand and accept them. How do befrienders, volunteers achieve these? Brings us to the befriending approach. The befriending approach is in the workbook. Hope you have read it. Just like the Charter, please familiarize yourself very well with this befriending approach, as it explains very logically why we do what we do in this particular manner to help our callers. The primary focus in the befriending approach is to explore feelings or emotions that the caller is having about the present situation she finds herself in, as well as issues in the past and possible scenarios in the future. The rationale behind this is that by allowing the caller to fully express how she feels, she may hopefully gain a deep insight and clarity into the nature of her feelings and how they influence her behavior and thoughts. Once she's fully aware of her feelings, she will be empowered to work with them more constructively. For example, learning how to manage her difficult feelings and subsequently make her own decisions in whatever problem she's struggling with. This then removes any need for us to solve her problem or provide advice to her. The role of the befriender is to walk with the caller, empathize with her as much as possible, and skillfully use the various aspects of the listening wheel to allow the caller to become fully aware of and express all her feelings. For example, a caller who is a male nurse in GH tells us that every time a male patient passes away, he finds himself crying uncontrollably and is greatly affected by these strangers' deaths. He's puzzled and embarrassed by this because he does not behave this way when female patients pass away. On further exploration of his feelings, the caller recalled that just before his own father passed away, he was unable to visit his father when his father was suddenly hospitalized because he was studying in a different state and sitting for his nursing exams. When asked how he felt about missing his father's funeral, he then confessed he felt very guilty and remorseful for missing the father's funeral and not being by his father's side when he was hospitalized. He then realized it was these feelings of regret, shame, and guilt, which he had tried to suppress for years, were affecting his behavior. That is, his crying bouts and overwhelming feelings of sadness, because he thought he had let his father down by not being there to comfort his father, and he also thought he had not fulfilled his duties as a filial and respectful son. Now that the caller had been made aware of and allowed to express his feelings without being judged, he felt relieved and unburdened by ventilating his feelings. When asked what he would like to do to make himself feel less guilty and not be emotionally triggered by future male patients' death, the caller said he would like to tell his father how much he loved and appreciated him, even though he knew his father was no more around. The caller is now empowered or has learned to manage his difficult feelings in his own way. So, what is the philosophy, theory, or way of thinking to the befriending approach? The philosophy is that we are human, so have feelings. It's like a human function like thinking. If that part of your brain that governs emotions and thoughts are not damaged, you'll feel and think as long as you are alive. Befrienders do not steer the callers from their difficult feelings, nor do we tell our callers not to have these difficult feelings. In fact, we encourage our callers to talk about their feelings. We allow them to fully express how they feel and make them aware of their feelings. And we always do this in a non-judgmental manner by being fully unconditional and accepting of what they have to say. When we allow callers to ventilate their feelings, the confusing thoughts and burdensome worries start to ease and become more manageable. Example, we get a call from a woman with 3 young kids who lost her husband suddenly. She is overwhelmed with emotions. That is, feeling angry, guilty, depressed, helpless, hopeless, confused, and suicidal. We don't say to her, "You should not think about dying, because who will then look after your children?" Instead, we listen in a non-judgmental manner while allowing her to offload or get things off her chest. This ventilation will reduce her psychological stress, calm her somewhat, and allow her to go on living another day by taking one day at a time. Please read the befriending approach a few times to fully understand what befriending is about, what our role as a befriender is, and how we achieve it by following the philosophy of this befriending approach. If you do not understand what your role is from the beginning, you will not be an effective befriender. In an earlier slide, I talked about needs and the feelings evoked when these needs are not met. We, as befrienders, also have our own needs and wants. As a befriender, what do you expect, want, or need from being a volunteer with befrienders? Be very honest with yourself, because it is okay to say, I am here to help myself as much as I want to help others. For example, it is okay to admit that you have become a befriender to fulfill your own need of being purposeful by helping others, or you want to learn more about befriending for your own self-growth and development. How would it affect you if your needs and wants as an effective befriender are not met? How will it make you feel? What will you do then? Your role as a befriender is to walk beside the caller, empathizing as much as possible by skillfully using different aspects of the listening wheel to enable the caller to be aware of his feelings and be able to fully express them. It is not part of your role as a befriender to solve the caller's problems or to give advice. The primary focus in the befriending approach is to explore feelings of the caller in the hope that the caller will realize how his feelings influence his thoughts and behavior. Befrienders enable the caller to be aware of his feelings and then allow him to fully express them. Once the caller understands the true nature of his feelings, he will be empowered to manage them more constructively. This in turn will enable him to make decisions on whatever problem he's struggling with. Take responsibility of those decisions so that he can move forward in his life. Empowerment of the caller is the key aim of the befriending approach. The theory of the befriending approach is that all humans have feelings, whether we want them or not. When callers with difficult feelings of hurt, sadness, guilt, or anger reach out to us, we as befrienders do not tell them not to have these feelings. Instead, we encourage them to talk about them by being unconditionally accepting of what they say in a non-judgmental manner. Meaning, we listen, ask appropriate questions to allow them to be aware and able to express their feelings freely without the fear of being judged. Once the callers get these feelings off their chest by ventilating, they will feel lighter mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. This in turn will allow them to have more clarity in their minds to make rational decisions and move forward in life. Please take a moment to answer the following multiple choice questions. And if you have any doubts, review the video again. If you have any queries on this topic, please bring your questions to the face-to-face session. Thank you.